This meeting will continue tomorrow. Members of the council literally met for the entire day today. There were several items on the agenda which we have started discussing. One of the main issues was, in order to calculate the compensation to any state which loses revenue upon the implementation of the GST, how would the word revenue be defined? The base year already has been taken to be 2015-16. Now the questions were, is the ITC reversal, which is given in the case of an intrastate transfer, to be included in the definition of revenue? The council decided that that would be included in the definition of the revenue. There were several other issues raised, one of which was that with regard to the 8 northeast states and the 3 hill states, that is the 11 geographically disadvantaged states which are considered to be special category, where central and state taxation has been exempted, would the exempted amount given by the state as an incentive be included in the definition of the word revenue? The council decided that only in the case of these special category states it would be included in the definition of the word revenue for the base year 2015-16. No other additions which were being proposed to be added to the meaning of the word revenue were agreed upon, and therefore the issue of definition of revenue as of 2015-16, the decisions were concluded in the council today. The next decision, which was equally important, was as to what should be the basis for calculating the revenue growth for the first 5 years, that is the compensation period, if any of the states is entitled to compensation. There were 5-6 different formulae which were to be discussed, and detailed discussion through the day was held on this question. It was finally agreed that a 14% secular rate of growth would be treated as a possible growth rate as far as revenue is concerned. With these two decisions, the issue with regard to the calculation of compensation itself was concluded in the discussions today. There are already several decisions which have been taken in the previous 2 meetings, and therefore I am not repeating any one of those. There are 2 more items on the agenda of the meeting. The first is relation to the taxation structure as far as the GST is concerned. On this issue, a discussion has started and a detailed presentation has been made with regard to what is the present level of revenue in the base year of the state governments taken collectively and the revenue of the base year of the central government. And the approach has been that when the two are added together, the rate structure of the GST must be such that it achieves that level of revenue. Obviously, this would be subject to the growth rate itself. So a discussion on this issue has started, presentation has been made. Some more documents with regard to this would be circulated to the members. The broad approach has been that the rate structure should be such that it does not lead to any further CPI inflation. Two, that the states have adequate revenue, so should the center, in order to discharge their obligations. And this has to be blended with only the least possible burden that has to be put on the taxpayer. The revenue model also should be such that the center has some additional resources which could be used for revenue payment, for compensation payment to any losing state. Detailed discussion has started on this item, and tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock the discussion on this item would continue. Once we are able to discuss and finalize the rate structure, then the technical group of officers would decide as to which item should be put, that is, which item of goods or services should be put into what category itself. After we finish discussion tomorrow on this, we would start a discussion on the inconclusive item of the last meeting with regard to cross empowerment. That's all I had to say with regard to the proceedings today. So far between the last two meetings and today, we have been one by one reaching a consensus on each issue. And so far all decisions have been taken by a consensus. And the object is to keep on discussing, rediscussing, even where there are no agreements in the first instance, and then finally reaching a consensus and take as many decisions as possible by consensus, and to the extent possible avoid a situation where we have to put an issue to vote. So far we have achieved that object. Thank you.
टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर को लेके जो शुरुआती चर्चा हुई, राज्यों के रुझान कैसे थे और इस मुद्दे पर आम सहमति बन पाएगी इस बैठक में, इसकी संभावना?
देखिए, मुझे लगता है जो सिद्धांत हैं वो बिल्कुल स्पष्ट हैं, जो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं। इन्फ्लेशन न्यूट्रल रहे, इतने साधन रहे कि राज्यों का खर्चा और केंद्र का खर्चा चलता रहे, और करदाता पे आवश्यकता से अधिक बोझ ना पड़े। तो इसमें अब हम इन सिद्धांतों को तय करने के बाद उसके जो अरिथमेटिकल कैलकुलेशंस हैं कि इस लेवल ऑफ टैक्सेशन तक पहुंचने के लिए कितना टैक्स लगना है और किस श्रेणी में, किस स्लैब में कितना लगना है, उस पर चर्चा है।
सर, ग्रोथ रेट जो तय हुआ है 14%, उसके पीछे जो ग्रोथ रेट 14% तय हुआ है, उसमें किस चीज को कंसीडर किया गया है?
देखिए, उसके पीछे जो उद्देश्य था, एक ऑप्शन था कि नॉमिनल जीडीपी हर वर्ष की ले ली जाए। दूसरा ऑब्जेक्ट था जो वैट का सिद्धांत था कि बेस्ट 3 आउट ऑफ द लास्ट 5 ईयर्स ले लिया जाए। तीसरा था पिछले 3 साल ले लिए जाएं। चौथा था कि पिछले 5 साल ले लिए जाएं, और पांचवा था कि पिछले 5 में से 2 साल सबसे अधिक और सबसे खराब वाला निकाल दिया जाए, जो आउटलायर्स हैं, और बाकी 3 ले लिए जाएं। तो ये जो एवरेज बनती थी इन सब फॉर्मुलेशंस की, वो 10% से शुरू होकर 18% तक जाती थी। अब उसमें किसी राज्य को की टैक्स बॉयंसी ज्यादा थी, किसी की कम थी, तो कुछ को ज्यादा लाभ होता, कुछ को कम होता। तो फिर इस पे एक आम राय बनी कि इन सब को छोड़कर एक बीच का रास्ता औसतन ले लिया जाए, जो कि लगभग 14% बनता था, और 14% का सेक्युलर रेट हर राज्य के लिए माना जाएगा, चाहे उसकी टैक्स बॉयंसी ज्यादा थी थोड़ी सी या थोड़ी सी कम थी, क्योंकि जितने फॉर्मूला थे दे रेंज फ्रॉम 10% to 18%.
So also in terms of the presentation or the discussion that has started on rates so far, no conclusion yet, sir. But are the indications that probably a band of around 18% in standard rates that is non-inflationary, somewhere there could be a possibility of some consensus at some point in time? They're not trying to outguess what the council will decide.
No, you see, whatever presentation has been made and whatever has been suggested is only a starting point for a discussion. This is not a firm or a final opinion. So because the discussion can't start in a vacuum, therefore a possible suggestion has been made. And I may also tell you that at least 5 alternative options on rate structure have been presented to the council. And therefore the object of that presentation is that eventually you must reach the target of revenue collection which you are otherwise likely to reach in 2017-18.
Sir, as you mentioned, the discussion on the rates would continue, but was there some agreement regarding 26% rate on luxuries and necessities?
That's all. That, you see, I will not make a comment on that.
The Kerala Finance Minister was tweeting while the meeting was going on.
Pardon?
The Kerala Finance Minister was tweeting while this was going on. This is what he tweeted while the meeting was going on.
No, it's still at the discussion stage. It hasn't proceeded towards a decision.
Calculations also take into account the CST rate as the central sales tax.
You see, the revenue calculations take into account the present level of CST which was being charged in 2014-15 or 2015-16. There was a detailed discussion as to, instead of 2, a presumptive rate of 4% would be considered, and finally it was decided that it would not be considered because clause 18 of the Constitution Amendment clearly provides loss suffered on account of implementation of the GST. So loss suffered or a possible loss suffered 5 years earlier is not loss suffered on account of implementation of the GST. Therefore, that demand was considered outside the scope of the Constitution Amendment.
Then what will be the central stand against Tamil Nadu since they are not ready to implement GST so far?
Pardon?
What will be the central stand against Tamil Nadu because Tamil Nadu is not fully agreeing with GST bill?
The Tamil Nadu is fully participating and more than actively participating in the discussions.
Yes, sir, but they are still on the management level, they are not ready.
No, Tamil Nadu is fully participating and there is no option for any state really to keep out of the system. Because once there is a constitution amendment, every state is bound by that constitution amendment.
जेटली आज एक बार फिर से विपक्ष के सबसे बड़े नेता राहुल गांधी ने ट्वीट करके ये मांग की है कि जीएसटी काउंसिल 18% रेट रखे जिससे कि गरीबों के ऊपर बर्डन न हो। उनके भी कई स्टेट यहाँ पर शामिल हुए, क्या उनको वो जो स्टेट यहाँ पर कांग्रेस रूली स्टेट है वो 18% से ज्यादा या मानेंगे, या आप 18% ही कंसीडर करेंगे राहुल गांधी को जो डिमांड कर रहे हैं?
देखिए, हमें जो भी यहाँ डिसीजन होगा वो कंसेंसस से होगा, और इसमें जो कांग्रेस पार्टी की राज्य सरकारें हैं उसके वित्त मंत्री जो हैं वो पूरी सक्रियता के साथ भाग ले रहे हैं।
Does the centre propose to impose a cess on demerit goods to pay for the compensation for states?
You see, these are all possible suggestions. We have not come to the state of decision as yet. Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.